Yo, so I already know that the title has pissed some people off, but I really do love Vampire Survivors. However, I like Soulstone Survivors a lot more, and in this episode of Early Access Investments, I'm going to attempt to show you why. Developed by GameSmithing Limited, Soulstone Survivors is a game I personally like a lot more, but I appreciate what Vampire Survivors popularized, and I'm in no way diminishing what Ponkel did with it. With that out of the way, let's get into the video. So, what is Soulstone Survivors? Well, Soulstone Survivors takes a now familiar gameplay loop and tackles it in immediately capturing ways. Progression, diversity, and replayability are all presented to you up front. In the menu, you're greeted with your first glimpse at what there is to do. You start to realize that you could be here for a while. For me, I could tell that if I wanted to, I could end up playing this for hundreds of hours, and to be assured of that just by looking through the menus is a good sign going into the game. And the game is solid too, but first I want to talk about the art style, which is what captured me initially. Visually, Soulstone Survivors is my favorite out of all the Survivor games I've played. A lot of the games in this genre have leaned towards the 2D perspective, which makes total sense, but I like the isometric 3D art style that Soulstone opts for. For me, it makes the game feel a lot more like an action RPG or something of that nature. It gives everything happening on screen a certain impact that the 2D art style might struggle to produce. One of the reasons for this impact is how amazing all the different abilities look. I'm super impressed with them, and they all look great when activated too. Rest assured, when you choose an ability that says it's going to spawn a swirling vortex, that's exactly what you get, and seeing it rip through enemies is a very enjoyable experience. I've also never seen two abilities that look the same or share the same assets, although that could be the case with some of them. I also really enjoy the unique looks of each character. The environments are unique too and have different layouts, but they definitely put more time into the things that ultimately matter more when it comes to visuals, showing that the devs have the right priorities. No matter what you do in Soulstone Survivors, you are always progressing. Each character has a level and each run has a purpose. Even if you're at max curse for an environment, you can still level your character, which means that 15-minute run you just died on wasn't for nothing. In terms of progressing during the run, I really like the pacing of Soulstone Survivors. Each run starts out how you would expect, with you quickly leveling up and choosing between awesome actives and helpful passives, but from that point forward, it is up to you to put together a competent build. I think progression during a run is mostly stress-free, and that's mostly due to a wide range of actives, only a few of which are underpowered, but mostly due to every passive being useful in some way. I've only ever banished passives because they didn't fit my build, not because they were underpowered, and knowing that every time I level up I'll get a worthy reward is a great feeling. In my opinion, the power spike comes in a few different forms. Of course, completing your build with active abilities is one, but where I have noticed it most is whenever I get a legendary passive upgrade. These upgrades can apply to not only base stats like multicast percentage, but also your actives, and I've noticed significantly more damage when I land myself a legendary upgrade or multiple rare or epic ones in a row. Now, when you do eventually die, you'll earn experience for the character you played, but you would have also earned resources to spend outside the run. The soulstones you get from killing the bosses are used across all forms of progression, in the skill tree, in the blacksmith, and unlocking new characters. Same with the currency you earn in your run as well. One key element of progression and choice in Soulstone Survivors is the runes. These are special things that can be added to each character to further strengthen your build or guide your run in a certain way. I really like these a lot, and I still have so many more to unlock, so there's already plenty more hours of fun there for me. As it stands right now, a lot of the resources you can earn can't actually be spent to the degree that you would like, as each class only has one weapon to craft and the skill tree isn't massive yet. This is the only big bummer for me right now, but as I'll talk about later, the developers have acknowledged this as one of their biggest priorities. But right now, you'll most likely end up stacking resources until they give us more ways to spend them. Despite this, there is still plenty of motivation to play, as leveling up each character unlocks abilities and that weapon I mentioned as well. And there are plenty of achievements to grind as well. The roguelite genre can generally be easily summed up in the word replayability, and Soulstone Survivors is no different. Like in Vampire Survivors, Soulstone Survivors has thrown a bunch of achievements into the game with good reason to go for them. For me, this abundance of achievements is the case that so no matter when you play the game, you're always accomplishing something and always being rewarded with that dopamine hit. It's incredibly smart, but it's also a key factor in replayability. Each achievement in Soulstone Survivors is accompanied by a reward, and that reward is your motivation to go for them. It's hard to narrow down replayability in a roguelite, as all the elements come together to make the game replayable, and I think for Soulstone Survivors it does that through the progression, through the achievements, and of course the immensely satisfying combat, which we'll get to next. Combat in this game is of course familiar to everyone at this point, but what separates Soulstone Survivors to me is how visually pleasing it is. The isometric nature means that abilities come to life, but so do the enemies. Watching a health bar go down and seeing the enemy fall over is a different experience to seeing them vanish into thin air in other games, and I like this game's combat for that. I also like the variation in status effects and types of abilities too, so you can end up stacking so many different debuffs onto an enemy, and seeing that above their health bar is also super satisfying. The game also makes you aim some abilities, which is a feature that works well around this style of combat. You also have a dash, and actively needing to dodge enemy attacks and focus your damage output does wonders in making the combat more engaging. I understand that with these types of games, sometimes you want to sit back, relax, and do nothing, but these two mechanics elevate the gameplay loop for me and fit perfectly with the style of the game. Lastly, it's worth mentioning that there is an element of challenge to Soulstone Survivors that also assists in replayability. You can apply different amounts of curses to your run to increase its difficulty, but in that you'll have access to higher tier resources and more XP. There are 7 levels of curse right now, and I've died attempting some of them multiple times. On top of that, you can do Overlord mode, which is the red portal at the end of a run, where you'll fight progressively more bosses with each completed stage. And of course there is an infinite mode too. Some of the achievements also ask that you complete a run in a certain time frame. The challenge isn't incredibly hard, but it is engaging enough so that without proper thought, you'll probably end up losing on the harder runs. Next, I want to talk about Gamesmithing Limited. They are the independent developers of Soulstone Survivors, and they are only a 2-man team at the moment, but they are looking for more help to develop their game. There's nothing to show that these guys aren't trustworthy, and the content and care they've shown with Soulstone Survivors is proof enough that this is a good investment. Just looking at the Steam update articles is proof that they are self-aware developers too, constantly recognizing the feedback and thanking the community. Those aren't just empty words, however, as each update cycle I have seen for this game has been of substance. The monthly update cycle is another good sign to me. Not only are they being transparent about development, but wanting to produce monthly content so that they have time to get the content right is obviously a good strategy. They also have another game that they're working on called Rogue Soulstone, which is the action roguelike version of Soulstone Survivors. I'll link that below as well. So for all these reasons, I see Soulstone Survivors as a great investment, and hopefully I've given my case as to why this game speaks to me more than Vampire Survivors does. And anyone who is pissed at the title now understands where I'm coming from. And again, I love Vampire Survivors, and in no way am saying that I think Soulstone Survivors is better, I just like it more. Anyway, that's it for me. Thank you so much for watching. Follow me on Twitter, subscribe, and see you next time.